busy and good. Yeah.
As always, you're quite a busy man. You live a very interesting life, Mr. Johnson.
I try to
Still,
act and think that I'm not busy, but I am.
well, but busy's good.
Mhm.
Busy's the Lord's work. So, I
Mhm.
mean, so you just came back from Mount Athos. This is what I think the meat and potatoes of our conversation is going to be about.
Okay.
You just posted a video up about your trip, some
Yes.
wonderful pictures. So I want to get into that. And of course, you just hosted, or you didn't host a conference. The conference was in Lockhart, Texas, where you're
We
from.
hosted it. Yeah.
Right.
My priest and I, if you will.
Sure. And you did a live counterflow, which is the name of your very esteemed channel, over there as well, which is also up, and people should go check that out, whether you're Orthodox or not. And
Especially if you're
yeah,
not. We
especially if
actually
you're not.
we get some
It's
good
interesting. Yeah, go ahead.
topics. Yeah, we got some good topics that I think while I had all of those smart gentlemen and one smart lady on the panel, I thought this is
Shout out
going
to
to be a
Rebecca.
lengthy one. So let's get some questions that, I have had each of those people on the show before, and I thought let's get some hard hitters, if you will, questions that they know very well the answer to, and that a lot of people get either confused by or put off by or whatever. Israel, the church, Ukraine, doxing, that type of stuff. So I found it to be one of my more favorite episodes, and especially that was my only second time to do an episode in front of a live audience, it's really cool to do that and take questions from the audience and all of that sort of thing.
Like I said before we press play, I've you were part of my homework for this week, and I got tardy with other stuff. But from what I did catch was great. The interesting thing I'm finding with Orthodoxy, especially, is that, and you and I both know this personally from our journey, if you want to use that word. I know it's your favorite. Is that when you first start experiencing it, you come in with all these ideas of what Christianity is because we've been raised in more Western traditions. And then you start encountering it, and you're like, whoa, what the hell is this? Like, this was always here? Like, wait,
Mhm.
for 2,000 years it's been here. What are you talking about? This is Meshuggah. And now I'm in these some DM groups on X, and people will say things. I'm like, oh, well, yeah, but that's here, go watch this. This kind of explains it and shows you the Orthodox roots of all this. Recently, there's someone talking about combining Plato and Aristotle. That was what's missing in the West. I'm like, yeah, that's well documented over here. And people are like, huh? I'm like, I know. I was surprised too. And that there's this onboarding consciousness into Orthodoxy now that, of course, we were maybe early adopters of, and that's not saying we're special at all, but I'm finding it fascinating seeing more and more people kind of getting the first taste of what we experienced 4 or 5 years ago. And that's very illuminating. It's very interesting, and it speaks to some of my predictions where as we're moving forward, and I want to get your thoughts on Russell Brand, as we're moving forward into this new age, and I certainly see this sort of mush Christianity starting to form. This is a prediction from Father Seraphim Rose in Orthodoxy and the Religion of the Future. This is like the starting points of it. And I think a lot of people are going to get very enthusiastic and it's our moment. And it's like, yes, but we Orthodox will be excluded from this pretty soon. Not immediately, but pretty soon. Sorry. Any thoughts on that? And maybe Russell Brand.
Yeah, we'll get to him in a second. I was just talking to someone who's going to be on an upcoming episode, and we discussed how there's certain things within Orthodoxy, depending on what your goal is. This person's goal is working through the political system to get Orthodoxy some representation, if you will. And it's like, to do that, you have to tiptoe around certain things to even have politicians listen to you. And then once you're in the door and seated at the table, then we can get into some more hardcore pressing things. And it's different though with your platform, my platform. Conrad from World War Now, I asked him on the panel on that live episode, do you feel like a weight or some responsibility on your shoulders since you have a big platform and you're an Orthodox Christian? Do you have to steer away from certain things? And he said, no, quite the opposite. I have to steer away from certain things, like in real life conversations. But when my audience is an largely Orthodox audience, I feel more open to speak truth, and I don't have to steer away from some of those things. So I think I think that's how I feel too. Of course, I'm not talking about like curse words or whatever, but just certain topics. Israel obviously is like a hotbed topic, especially right now. And I think stripping off preconceived notions or malinformed uh, opinions and whatnot that we all still have them. But like you said, when you were raised in the West and you're like, this is what Christianity is, and we got to always support this and that. And then you discover the truth and it's like, wait, what? No, no, no. And it's not even like my opinion that, if you get out and say the Orthodox Church is Israel, not this Jewish secular state over there. It's not my opinion. So it's very easy to say it. It's like, this is our theology. And it's the theology that was around before the theology that says Israel, the state of Israel, is something special. And so that helps, I think. And Russell Brand, do you have any specific questions on him? I have to try hard not
the tidy whitey image that is the it's interesting. I don't know what his faith is. I'm assuming Anglican or Church of England or something like that because he's British. Maybe I'm wrong. And if anyone knows, put in the comments below. But there's a picture going around of him participating directly in a baptism, and he's wearing tidy whities and baptizing someone, whatever. And to me, that seems to be one of the cruxes, is that many people have gotten into their head that baptism is it's the one and done. I've made jokes about it. Like, sort of like you could make, evangelicals could make a baptism drive-through, like
Yes.
sort of like a car wash, basically.
I bet you there is one.
Well, probably. It's a growth industry. Get on that, someone.
Yeah.
Please don't. But you know what I'm saying.
Vegas, right?
Right, exactly. And they get this idea that it's one and done. Oh, you've been baptized. Okay, warrior of Christ, off to go. And in our tradition, in the tradition that I'll be careful because I haven't been rebaptized. The tradition that I'm observing, the baptism is just the start. Like you go through this process, then you're baptized, and now the real work begins.
Yes.
Because now you're an antenna to God. You're in God's. You're on the royal path, and that comes with a bunch of responsibilities. I think that is why my prediction, we'll call it, that the Orthodox faith, as people will move more into a generalized Christianity, because there's a desire out there for redemption, but they'll accept forgiveness, a general forgiveness, which is what I think a lot of people think the baptism is. Born again, my sins have been removed from me, and now I'm this new agent in the world. Yeah, it doesn't work like that.
Right.
There is power to it, but the ritual has to bear out across your life. It's as I've said, when we say the Jesus prayer, it's returning to the Father, repenting to be redeemed.
Yes.
And you're doing this consistently throughout the day. Our morning and evening prayers are consistent. They're a recognition of, I'm still a sinner. The saints are still sinners. Like the seed of sin is still in us. There's no getting rid of it just because you got dunked in a river.
Yes, especially by Russell Brand. It seemed to me when I saw that picture, I had already had worrisome thoughts about what he's doing, especially on such a large public platform. And it was sort of I would say a little bit of a slow process, his 180-degree turn, but it's like how'd you go broke, slowly, and then boom, all at once. And I asked, I'm not going to say the priest's name for his own privacy and protection, but I said, does it seem like this is a mockery to you? I sent him that picture. And he said, he's deluded but sincere. He's being mocked by the demons, and thus, for many, Christianity is mocked because of them. So I figured that's sort of a fair way to look at it. So maybe, you can't judge a man's intentions. I don't know what his are, but he's certainly putting himself out there, like you said, in tidy whities. And it was interesting to see, for the most part, I think a lot of his stuff, the responses were people pushing back. Even non-Orthodox maybe weren't comfortable with the underwear part of it. But I still got people pushing back on me, like, no, trying to give their explanation of what he's doing and why it's good. I guess we got to pray for him.
Well, yeah, that is always the calling. I think it started off with Jordan Peterson showing up with
Yes,
multi his multicolored dream coat, with the symbols on his jacket. And again, I credit Peterson greatly. I credit his Christian series back when I was still very much an atheist. Uh, as a mental bridge, something that softened me, that maybe dropped the anti-theist Chris
absolutely.
Hitchens
Same.
mentality and sort of going, okay, well, I can groove with this. I can groove with the idea that Christianity is an operating philosophy, and if you're going to be adopting a philosophy, a world, I didn't know the word phronema at that time, but like if you're going to adopt a worldview, trying to be like more like Christ, where's the downside, really,
Hmm.
on a personal level? And then flash forward one religious spirits afterwards, and all of a sudden you're like, well, crap.
Yes.
Now I have a whole life to repent for, and that's just the back catalog. And there's all this other stuff coming up, coming down the pipe too, that I'm going to have to ask for forgiveness for.
Yeah. I find that usually the truth within Christianity is free of pride and vainglory, as it should be, of course. And some of the things Russell Brand is doing are not free of those things, it would seem to me, especially, just the photo, everything. And then, of course, now you mentioned Peterson. I see them together praying. I'm not knocking prayer, obviously, and they're doing the Lord's Prayer at that, but something seems off. And it's just a gut feeling, is all I can say. And it did, to your credit, the predictions that people like yourself and Matt and Charles Haywood have talked about, where we're going to get this rightward swing in culture, which will include, we talk about how the woke stuff's really thin. There's nothing solid beneath it. But that's why it just is so flimsy and weak. And those type of people are going to go, oh, I'm out of this thing. Now I'm this thing. And it seems that it's possible that what they get into, even if it appears to be the opposite spectrum, that it's still sort of flimsy and not a lot holding it up.
Yeah, and I mean, as you said, we don't know people's intentions, like um, what their noose is telling them. Father Turbo Quails once famously said that wherever Christ is being worshipped is a good thing. Uh,
Hmm.
and far be it for me to ever counter signal the good Father, but my concern, and I guess this is from my perspective, is that while that's true, it's very important to make sure we're worshiping Jesus Christ and not Bob Christ,
Yes.
because I think there's a lot of Bob Christ people coming down the pike who are going to try to remake the church or reform the church. This is something that Peterson once said, after he came back after he was changed in Russia, and he said something along the lines of, uh, and to his young male audience, you need to go and reform the church. If the
Mhm.
churches aren't spreading the message that they should, that you need to reform them. And you know I was never a Protestant,
Mm.
so I don't. My exposure to that is very limited. So I don't know the inner workings of the Baptist or Anglican or et cetera churches. I can only judge them from a bird's eye view. And sure, reform the Anglican Church. Like they've gone crazy. Like,
Mhm.
what are you doing, right? Like now, what they have lesbian,
Mhm.
non-gendered priests. Uh, I don't know. I don't know what that is. Um, but so sure, reform that out of it. But once you start that, where do you stop? Because
Mhm.
where is your discernment? Where is your hierarchy? Who's giving you the 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 right or the direction in order to where do you stop? Like, do you reform Christ out of the church? Well, I think that's kind of probably where you want to go, right? To modernize Christ into some sort of new ideal Christ. You
Mhm.
know, you're just sorry, I'm speaking heresies, just trying to describe it. But I feel like that's a likely possibility as well, where we're going to start seeing more and more of that.
Father Peter here said something that has stuck with me, and it was at the Southern Orthodox conference that we had here in Lockhart. He was one of the speakers, and that speech will be published at some point. It's not yet, and I'm really excited for it to be because I want to clip this. The topic comes up often in our circles: the American Orthodox Church. Should we somehow all come together under one, uh, bishop or whatnot? Um, and have an American Orthodox Church, one patriarch. And he said, quit trying to make Orthodoxy American. America was never a Christian country. So you're off on the wrong foot. You need to make America Orthodox. So people are looking at it in a backwards manner. And we've got this Western Protestant Puritan stuff ingrained in our education system, a lot of our thought processes that, well, we're a Christian country and it is that. And so we should have the 10 commandments. And his position was like, no, America is not a Christian country. It never was one. So get that out of your thought process. It'd be nice to make it one. And if you want to do that, it needs to be via orthodoxy, but quit trying to say like, let's make an American style or because that is literally would be taking Christ out of it.
Yeah, you can't. Building on some of the things I've been saying recently is that liberalism is Luciferian to its core. It's
Mhm.
it the Enlightenment is Luciferian. That's the energy, that's the spirit that's animating it. The revolutionary spirit
Yes.
is satanic, um, and not and people hear that and they'll be, but what about this technology? What about that? What about this? I'm like, sure. I mean, I'm not trying to be a la carte about it. Like, I'm or throwing out multiple babies with the bathwaters, but the structure that you are living under is Luciferian to its core, and you can't be choosy with that. It's not like you can just be a little bit Luciferian, like
Mhm.
just on Mondays, just
Mhm.
not on Sundays, but every other day of the week. So that's kind of the uh, the work ahead of us, and I don't believe this will ever be completed, and certainly not my lifetime.
Right.
But breaking that liberal frame and freeing us from that mentality, on a national level, on a country level, what a wonderful thing that would be. But that again, there's your pride and vainglory of thinking much higher, much bigger thoughts than you probably are due. Uh, I'm looking only at myself and my audience and my family and ways to break that frame and see clearly. And you're going to still have to live in it, but you don't have to be. You don't have to. It's almost be uh, be in this world but not of it. It's just
Mhm.
like you have to be aware of how these things are playing out and how they're affecting you, and then that's how you build things that are good, beautiful, and true. It can't be based on this sort of liberal enlightenment uh, structure, because that's where the demons get you every single time.
Mhm. And because that basic philosophy is antithetical to reality, and which it in turn now a lot of progressives, that's what you hear of, I've said it many times, ultimately it has to fall apart because it's not real. It's not truth. And there's no such thing as equality. It's impossible, that sort of thing. So anyone pushing, if your system pushes for equality, then your system's founded on faulty reason that won't ever work. And so that's part of the problem too. And like you said, to pride and vainglory, I, I'm struggling to make Buck Johnson Orthodox. I don't have a wife and kids. If I did, I'd be struggling to make sure this household is Orthodox, much less like, what am I going to do? Make Texas Orthodox, right? Like, I need to work on this fella first for a long time. If you think about being technically not an Orthodox Christian for 40 something years, and now you become one and you're like, oh, I'm good for, I'm in this for 2 years. I'm ready to start working on other people or other, systems at play here. It's like, you got a long time to go.
Yeah, and I think that's the ortho bro phenomena that people always bring up, especially when you talk to non-Orthodox people. Usually they'll bring up like, "Oh, you're not an ortho bro, are you?" Or, "Well, I'm
Mhm.
like, you know." And on one hand, I don't want to be. I can't be that guy. I can't throw any stones because I live in a bloody glass condominium. So there's I'm never want to doubt someone's faith or where they're at, because I know that that first initial 6 months, a year, where you're encountering all this and you're starting to understand the lies and the deceit, and not even just deceit from other people, but your own self deceit, which
Yes.
you've convinced yourself of, that no one else forced you to. You just put it in your head and you've been running with that program for a long time. And then you're breaking that program, and there's that first 6 months or year, it depends on the person, where you decide to go really hard. Like,
Hmm.
I'm going to be the most orthodox person in existence, and I'm going to tell everybody why they're wrong. And what are you
Hmm.
talking about, you crazy Roman Catholic? And you're tisking someone who was born, who's probably cradle Roman Catholic, who's been far more religious and attending far more sincerely more ceremonies than you have. Or I'll talk about myself, than I have. And I'm going to turn around and start wagging my finger and tisking them for on their faith, and on theological arguments been having going on for 2,000 years that I've just encountered, and now I'm the
Yes.
bloody well expert too, because I listened to all the Lord of Spirits podcasts. Like, what?
Yeah.
What are you talking about? So yeah, there's always those levels up. You level up, and then you encounter. Maybe I'll tell you this about me and see if this works with you. I think it will. Is that as you level up and as you become more aware of where you're at, as you receive more grace, or as you go through suffering, and through that suffering you're brought closer to God, and you start to receive that grace. That grace isn't always this glowing, beautiful thing. Sometimes the grace can be harsh, can be hard. Uh, uh, but as you go through that, you butt up against your pride, and you start to realize where you've been prideful, vainglorious, gluttonous, whatever have you, right? You start to encounter your passions. And once you get to that level, that's when you can truly have uh, great forgiveness. That's when things like Father Sarah from Rose says the proper position for an Orthodox Christian is to always assume that you are the worst sinner. That I am the worst sinner in the world.
Yes.
My sins are unforgivable because they are my sins. I am control. I can control them. They're my responsibility, and excuse and forgive and find excuses for everybody else. And I think when I say that, people's first response is to go to the worst of the worst and say, "You're condoning the worst people." I'm like, "No, no,
Mhm.
no. I'm talking about where you can work at. I can't change Hillary Clinton, just to use a
Right.
name,
Yes.
right? I have no effect on her. Like, there's nothing I can do, and if I could do it, I wouldn't be around anymore probably.
Hmm.
But, uh, but to that point is like, I can do something about me. And if I take that assumption and work from that assumption, then all these other things are possible. If I'm focused on, you know, converting Hillary Clinton over to Orthodoxy, I mean, God bless, maybe that can happen, but it's not gonna be for me.
Hmm.
And all I can do is be a model into the world to show you my work and say, I'm a work in progress. This is my work. This is how
Hmm.
I'm bearing witness.
Yeah, my patron saint back here, Saint Seraphim of Sarava choir. That's one of the reasons I loved him so much, or I do love him so much. One of the things that attracted me to him is I'm not a salesperson, so I just never have been. It's not in my bones, if you will. It should be in my blood because my mom is a salesperson, but I, I can't go out. Someone once told me, and it stuck with me also, you can't argue someone into heaven, but you can argue a lot of people out of it. And so Saint Seraphim said, acquire the spirit of peace and thousands around you will be saved. And what that says to me is like, let them see the change in you. You don't have to be the zealot ortho bro. And I don't even like using ortho bro as a derogatory term because I think it's kind of fun. But to start chastising people and, well, you better do this, or you better wear a head covering, or you better, it's like, why don't you be quiet and focus that inwardly and tell yourself you better do this, that sort of thing. And I think that's more impactful in the long run. I do, and I'm not, you know, I do appreciate some of the debate shows. I think Jay Dyer specifically has a, a blessed ability to do what he does and to pull on the knowledge that he's got a lot of. But not everyone's Jay Dyer, and so that's his gift that he can do that. Uh, but I'm not, and so I'm not going to go online and start. I've had people write me, "Why didn't you push back on this certain guest or here and there?" And it's like, because that's not my job. I don't want to push back on unless it's something completely crazy. Of course I would, but I'm not here to pick apart like a theology that, oh, you're wrong on this one thing, sir. And even I get into, I would call them soft debates with my father, he's been Protestant. He's 77 years old, and he's been like a deep Christian since his 20s, probably. So who am I to argue, even if I understand that from the Orthodox Church teachings, what he's saying's incorrect? He's been reading the Bible longer than I've been alive. And so it just seems out of my lane to be like, oh, excuse me, you messed up on this one part, and it's just not in my nature to do that.
Yeah, and it creates a rivalry that we don't necessarily need. And I think so we started off this conversation saying this mush Christianity that's forming, and I think will be the pop culture,
Yes.
sort of the anecdote to the woke will
Yes.
be Christianity, but a Western Christianity, and again that sort of mushy, almost monadism kind of Christianity, that you can even start seeing, reverberations from the Pope,
Hmm.
where he's, talking about sort of, it's only one God, and we all face, pray to the same God, just in different ways. And it's like, it's a nice little message. I get it. Like, if I am from sales, so I get the sale. I see what you're doing. Like, it's clever. But when you're talking about people's actual souls,
That's the problem.
and medicine for the soul, yes, you can be a practicing Hindu, technically, and live by almost by accident, a Christian life. Like, these things are not impossible. They're just highly unlikely,
Hmm.
because the ritual and reality are one. That which rituals you perform and that you worship and that are part of your daily life, inform your reality. And your reality is going to filter out certain information, make certain things possible and then impossible. And so the who you worship and how you worship becomes incredibly important, especially when we're talking about things like, and you've had these conversations with Cyprian, the attention economy,
Hmm.
where we place our attention is essentially what we're worshiping at any given time.
Yes.
So, and this is part of scripture. This is 2,000 years of advice, where it's like, always keep God in your head.
Yes.
It's not just
Pray
sure,
unceasingly.
yeah. Exactly.
Right. And so that's obviously, it's tough to live a monastic life, and I'm probably won't be able to do that. But these, just being around them in Athos, you can see these monks just constant prayer. And I remember sitting with one of them there was maybe 10 of us, including Father Peter, sitting with a priest monk, and we're all having a conversation. This monk's involved in it, and I see him not counting, but he's saying the Jesus prayer to the each notch in his prayer rope while we're having this conversation, and he's part of the conversation. So those were the things maybe at least look to as something that it would be a neat goal to be able to achieve, and rather than like, who can I go baptize and show everyone on the social media that I just baptized someone, and then what couple can I marry and show that I'm real Christian now and I just married a couple. These people are all liking me now. It's just a massive difference in disposition.
Let's talk about Mount Athos, because
Okay.
you've had this wonderful experience.
Mhm.
I'm a little Christian jealous for a second.
Mhm.
Not jealous is the wrong word. I don't get jealous, but it's
Yeah.
more like, and it's not even envy. It's more like, oh, that's cool. That I would like to do one day if my feet ever get to the point where, well, I'll just ride the mule. That's what I'll do.
The
Because
mules were fun. Father Peter doesn't like it when we say the word fun. The mules were quite the experience, and
okay.
certainly helpful, but yeah, there's a lot of walking.
Tell us all about it, my friend. And again, I'll redirect people. Of course, you have an episode detailing it with pictures and all the rest of it. Who was, I guess, sorry, I'm sorry. Who was your guest
Conrad
name?
France of the World
Conrad.
Will Now podcast.
He used to go by Seraphim as well, right? Or
Negative. That's just
no?
me.
Okay.
Yep. There is a
Um,
Saint Conrad.
there's a Saint Conrad. Okay.
Mhm. He
So yeah.
taught me all about him.
Uh,
So Father Peter takes a group of people every year to Mount Athos. In the past, it's been priests. My friend, who's a Antiochian priest in Houston, Father Joseph Honeycutt, was one of the people I know that's been on it. Tim excuse me, Father Joseph Honeycutt is what I said. Tim Honeycutt, I believe he's been on my show. He's well known in Ortho circles. He's gone with him. Last year, I believe it was last year, he took seminary students, and this year he wanted to take a few podcasters. And I said this on the show. It's not secret anymore, but it would have been neat had it happened. Alex Jones was supposed to go as well. And when these legal issues hit Alex, where they're taking his studio and doing all of these things, he was not able to go. So he reached out to myself, Conrad, David Aaron, who's a brilliant, he's got a video stream, YouTube page that he does. He's actually going to be on the show as well. Boy, he's a smart guy. We're going to talk about essence and energy distinctions, because outside of Jay, I'm not sure that I've ever heard someone break it down so eloquently. So we're going to talk about that. So Father Peter reached out to us and a few other people, and it was quick too. It was within under a month notice. And I was, at first you're like, oh my goodness, Mount Athos. And then you look at the time, he's like, it was going to be 8 days on the mountain and with a day or two on either side of that. And it's like, well, that's quick. And, I'm used to my comforts, my routine, my schedule. And I was like, wow, that's a lot. And at the same time, I'm like, well, I have to go. What a possibly once in a lifetime opportunity. And if I'm a content creator online, think of how many people that listen to my show and your show would jump at that in a second. And so it almost felt like that I'm responsible in a way that, like, of course, I have to go to this. So I did.
yes, Buck. I'm trying to live vicariously through you.
Got it. Well,
I'm wearing the Death of the World shirts. Like,
yes,
come
yes.
on. It's just like I'll be running into burning buildings probably at some point. No, I won't. But I still won't wear shorts either.
I was I'm wearing shorts right now. I was actually asking the guys there at Mount Athos, like, where's the fire department here? There isn't one. There's hookups. Anyway, getting technical. There's plans in case something burns, but yeah, there's not. It's just a fascinating place. They're their own autonomous entity, and it's governed by, as far as I understand, heads of certain monasteries. They meet at this one building that we saw in what you could call downtown. It's basically the only small area that looks like a town in Mount Athos, with a few stores and whatnot, restaurants, and their kind of quote unquote government building is there. And what a unique place. There's no women. For over 1,000 years, not a woman has set foot. There was a tale that I suppose is true. The person that told me knows a lot of things about this, that even when the Nazis were going there, they were initially going there to ransack the place and take all of the art and the icons and everything. They ended up not doing that. And when they got there, there had been, I think it was that there was a plane shot down or something like that. And there people were on a boat, and there was a woman, patient, if you will, on the boat, and they left her on the boat, and they still went on the island. So it's like it has really been adhered to, as far as I understand, which is interesting. It's the it's the only place I've ever been that length of time where there's not a female. I would say by day 3, you kind of look around, it's like, wow, this is different, not what I'm used to. And so the experience was beautiful. It took me out of my comfort zone on in many ways, on many levels, on many occasions. Just little things that we take for granted. There's no AC. It was hot there. It was in the 90s, I would say. No AC. Sometimes you get to shower. Sometimes there's water. Not all the time. Lots of walking, lots and lots and lots of walking. Then lots of standing, because some of the services we were attending, they were starting at 2 in the morning. One of them, I think I got to at 3 a.m. and it was done by 10 a.m. And so, granted, you're not standing the entire time, but you are a lot of the time. The parishes within the monasteries where liturgy takes place. This has been the case in most of the monasteries, even in the states that I've seen. It's these old school wooden chairs, kind of almost attached to the wall, if you will, that line the wall. So we were able to sit down in some of those at points. But it was a special place. The Mother of God is very much felt there. I would, in my case, I think, and that seems to be a common sentiment, the whole mountain is her mountain. And so that's part of the reason no other women are allowed there. Like, it's hers.
So there is a woman present.
That's her, just her.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that was pretty special. I felt that a lot. The services were beautiful in that style of, a lot of your listeners are familiar with that style of chanting. And it was beautiful. You really form a bond too with the group of us that went. You're walking miles and miles in the hot sun. You kind of break off into little groups as people go slower than other people, and you just get to know them and talk. I already knew Conrad. He lives in Austin, so it was cool to get to know him better. I only knew Father Peter from coming on my show and talking back and forth here and there on DMs, but what a special man he is. I got one-on-one time. Just he would ask me questions about my life and church and thoughts and my past, and he's a pretty special, unique man. I got to pick his brain on. I suppose that he's very adamant about baptism, and he's written a book. Basically, I say, and I would tell him this. He would talk about how people get upset when I wrote this book about baptism. I'm like, it's not your opinion. You're literally quoting saints and church. He's like, exactly. And so we talked a lot about baptism. We talked about his ecclesiastical status, which I suppose I can talk about because he just did a live stream on it last night. I would suggest everyone goes and watches that on his channel, because I can't tell you how many people would write me and go, ask him why he doesn't have a bishop. And I'm like, I'm not going to ask that. And he brought it up. He told me his whole story. He, again, in his live stream, he went into it last night. And
can you give us a little bit of taste of that? Maybe just for the audience, because some people here will be familiar with terms, others won't be. What do you mean exactly when you say his ecclesiastical status?
He currently does not have a bishop. And so within Orthodoxy, there's people that will tell you, oh, you can't be a priest without a bishop. Right. It's
and again, just for my audience, the hierarchy of, because I think a lot of people think that the church father is at the highest part of the hierarchy. But there, of course, there are people who are above your priest, church father,
yes,
etc. So maybe
your
just say that a little bit, and then we'll.
Okay. Your priests have to answer to a bishop, and a bishop is always a monk. The priests in Orthodoxy can be married to and have wives, kids, etc. Most of them do. Most of them have quite a lot of kids, in my experience. and the bishops cannot be. And so usually they are monks, not 100% of the time, I suppose, but as far as I understand, they are. In fact, we met with a priest monk on the mountain, and I'm not going to say which jurisdiction or anything because I don't know exactly what's going to happen. But excuse me, he seems to be in line to become a bishop in the United States. And I remember telling him, and it would be in New York. I hope that's not giving away too many details, but I said, "How long have you been on Mount Athos?" And he said, "Oh, about 15 years." And I said, "I can't imagine going from Mount Athos for 15 years to New York. And that's your new place. What a crazy adjustment that will be." But yeah, so Father Peter technically right now doesn't have a bishop. He's still a priest. There's some, in my opinion, not his fault, and some of it did have to do with stuff that we were outspoken on. But he was very early on outspoken online against the stuff that happened in 2020. So that that caused him some strife, not only with people in comment sections, but people above him too. Sadly enough.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, we won't get into the inner workings or the inner dramas of the Orthodox Church, the greater Orthodox Church, we'll say. But yeah, there's some things that the Greeks have got to work out, unfortunately. So,
Yeah, and some other jurisdictions as well. And I
oh yeah,
liken it for a secular analogy. I'm a firefighter. I'm a lieutenant in the fire department. Above me is a captain. Above him is the chief. Well, there's a bunch of captains. There's a bunch of chiefs all throughout the fire department. Some are great. Some are not the best. So that's that way in all sort of organizations.
right. Uh, yeah, I mean, I'm observing of the traditional Orthodox Church of Ukraine, which
The real
is
one.
going. Yeah, the real one,
Yeah.
the one that's there's only one that's illegal. So I'm part of the
Mhm.
illegal one over
Yeah.
over back in the homeland.
And there's one that's
Um,
propped up by the US State Department. And sadly enough, there's some hierarchs that are supporting the fake one. So
yeah, well, and then you kind of dig into those hierarchs and find out
right.
a few things about them too. So then it's not surprising, but
No.
God will find it. I believe that God will find a way. So okay, so you're with Father Here's, you're on Mount Athos. Uh, Again, seeing some of the pictures there, which are just stunningly beautiful of the
Yes.
churches. Um, w- you come back from that now. Now you're back. Now you're back in the States.
Mhm.
W- Did you feel like you leveled up? Did you feel like are you are you walking around with a bit of Mount Athos in you now? Just has that? ha- I wouldn't say has it changed your faith, um, but what would you say the effects have been, or are you still? I mean, it's still relatively fresh, right? So,
Yeah, I would say it deepened my faith. It I feel like closer to the mother of God, closer to God, not in the prideful way like, "Oh, I'm so much better." Just that there was a lot of talking to them, a lot of hours of that. So I found that helpful. Even little things, little church tradition things that I'm more aware of, monastic practices that I'm more aware of. And so it just helps. And Father Peter's point was I wanted to take people that do podcasts and produce content that inquirers see, Orthodox people see, priests see. Uh, if you're going to do that, I'd like you to experience the heart and soul of the Orthodox Church and watch, take part in it, observe, feel, smell, taste everything, experience what it really is about. And he didn't say this, but this is my interpretation of how I see it. But like rather than just shooting your mouth off online, not having experienced the roots of orthodoxy. And so I think it was helpful in that nature. And just to again, it took me out of my comfort zone. even getting chastised by some monks a few times. I come from a punk rockish background, and it's like someone chastised me at a bar or something, and then y there's an issue. So, but that's still in me, like, when someone says something in a direct, harsh way, my first instinct is to be like, "What?" And so, you have to shut all of that out. That's the old man, right, that we're trying to kill off. And so, it helps understand obedience within a hierarchy, which I think is extremely important. You understand discipline. I will say you don't necessarily understand being on time. Greek time is, I was learned quickly that it's not like fire department time. And I thought that's actually kind of a nice lesson to learn. Like, you don't have to, when we say be at liturgy at 2 a.m., okay, try to be there close to 2. But it's like even the Orthodox, I never understood this until now. Even Orthodox churches in America are famous for this. At my own parish, people roll in like 30 minutes, 45 minutes into the service. And at first, like the American Western mind, I was like, why would they be late? That's weird. It's just what it is. And it was kind of neat to see it, like, and of all places, Mount Athos, it happens too. And we experienced an earthquake, which was wild, 4.3, in what I would say was the middle of the night. And for us on our sleep schedule, it might as well have been, but it was probably like midnight or 11. Again, we were going to wake up at 2 or 3, so that felt like the middle of the night, but that woke us up. And it's interesting, that had been happening. That was like the 20th one that month. And so the next morning during the actually, it was when we went to eat. We go eat with the monks after every service. And we after the prayers were done at the very end, the abbot of that monastery it was in Greek, so I didn't actually grasp what he was doing at first, but it was a prayer regarding earthquakes. And Father Peter's son, Gregory, what a brilliant young man. He's 23. And I mean, one of the smartest young kids, one of the smartest people I've ever met. And he speaks not only modern Greek, but he can speak the, if you will, biblical Greek, which I think is, I forgot the name of it. Anyway, my own priest would be like, Buck, I just told you. But he can speak that sort of Greek as well. And so he was our translator for most of the time. And I was sitting by him, and he says, this is a prayer regarding earthquakes because of what happened last night. And it had been happening. There was lots of talk about World War III. That was the general sentiment within several discussions with monks, that some things are happening. I will say some of the stuff that, let's call it the Fordhamite wing of the Orthodox world online, which I feel is probably funded by the State Department. Those people that would slam us as Ortho Bros or slam Jay Dyer or Father John Whiteford, the monks on Mount Athos, the things they were discussing with us, they're very close with opinions on certain world issues to Father John Whiteford and Jay Dyer and Father Peter Heers, and not so much close with the people at Fordham and these people pushing back, calling us Ortho Bros. So it was interesting to see that aspect of it as well.
That's interesting. Because I'm assuming there's not exactly a whole bunch of cell phones or internet on Mount Athos.
It was kind of just depending on which monks you were talking to. One of the monks didn't know what a podcast was. Some of the monks knew exactly. There was a lot of them knew Father Peter, but a few that didn't knew exactly who he was from his show. So It's just kind of dependent on where you're at. In fact, one monk we spoke with, Father Peter, only a few times has had this lady, Maria Z, on his show. And she's she's from Australia. She actually lives in Austin now. I just met her the other day. But very much InfoWars, kind of brash sort of person, beautiful. And one of the monks said, "You're Father Peter Heers. Wow. Where's Maria Z?" Like immediately it's like, wow. So some of these guys do watch some of this stuff, and then others didn't know what a podcast was. So,
right. Well, if anyone's watching this from Mount Athos, Thank you very much for tuning in. I appreciate it. I'm going to try to clean up the show a little bit. So, skip some of this stuff, but
Yes.
the
Thanks for
religious
putting
shows
up
will
with
be
me. Thanks for
cleaned up.
putting up with me and for chastising me when I needed it.
Yes. Well, I think we all need it more often than not. Okay. Let's touch on World War III as we're going to round out the show. I personally don't. I know there's a lot of people making predictions about this. I'm more in agreement with Thomas 777 when he says that this is not a World War III scenario anytime soon. That if there will be a let's say something that can arise to the label, it'll actually happen far off in the distance over Central Asia, because that'll be the real battleground, I think, in the 21st century in sort of an age of empires. And I happen to greatly agree with that. But of course, we do have the situation in the Middle East. We do have we'll just call him out. And Benjamin Netanyahu, I think, is revealing to the world exactly what he's all about. It's very easy and tempting to lambast everyone from that faith in a certain way. I am making every single effort in my personal and professional life to not do that, because one, it's easy, and two, it doesn't get us anywhere. However, Zionism is revealing itself as the true opponent, I think, to mankind, and to the Jews themselves. This is an ideology that needs to be contended with in the here and now. And I'm not afraid of calling that out, because, again, as Father Turbo Quayles once famously said, you can't be Orthodox and a Zionist or pro-Zionist on any level. And I think now, as we're seeing what's being borne out, of course, I think Netanyahu's doing the classic kick the dog until it bites and then shoot the dog kind of routine. And that will threaten to drag the West into confrontations that it has no business being in. So anyways, any thoughts on that? And of course, you've talked to people on Mount Athos about this, or to other people about this. So I will defer to whatever whatever their insights are. Because their predicting powers are far greater than mine in many ways. But so any thoughts on where are you at on World War III?
So one, I suppose I want to preface this with, sometimes I think we can get confusion or conflate like World War III with the apocalypse, the end of the world. And I will say, I think those are two separate things. And so we spoke with one probably what would be considered the wisest elder on Mount Athos. Thousands of people go there to speak with him, hours and hours to wait for him. People were lining up, we were told, at 3 a.m. Luckily, he knew Father Peter, so we kind of got to squeeze in a little moment with him. And I asked him something. Well, actually, Conrad started with it, and he said, for one, quit thinking that every day is about to be the end of the world, or the end of the world's coming. And he didn't say this specifically. This is our language, but he was trying to get at, don't be so black-pilled about the world right now. And he said, there was a gentleman here that just was in deep depression, because he said, I see all these things online and I read all this stuff and it's just getting worse and worse. And he's like, stop, just live a Orthodox life, keep your prayer rules strong, and quit worrying about when the end of the world's about to happen. All right. Separate from that, many of the monks were of the mindset that World War III is closer than we probably think. I think the optimist in me leans towards what you're saying. But again, I don't want to go against what they're saying either. But, they're talking about prophecies by St. Paisios, and there's a lot out there that I have to admit seems viable. Obviously, I trust in the saints and what they were saying. The hard thing for me is applying what they're saying, like, oh, does that mean this action is going to happen and this thing over here? The problem with Zionism, and one of the many problems, and is that a lot of them especially if you're talking about the evangelical wing of Zionism, they are trying to bring about a conflict because they do think that that conflict will bring about the second coming. Like they have control over when Christ comes back. And it's this, the late great Planet Earth was a show that was out, and the Schofield Reference Bible and all of these things, uh, Left Behind series and whatnot. These are very unhealthy things because it leads people to want this big conflict to happen, and because, oh well, we're going to be taken away and then we're all good. And it's like, stop. This is very bad theology. It's very unhealthy. It's demonic. They don't understand. Well, some of them do, but a lot of your average Southern Baptist doesn't grasp that that's demonic. They actually think quite the opposite. So that's the problem with the Zionist worldview and the Zionist actions. And unfortunately, AIPAC and all of these people have so much power. And I just wish if we could get more of the truth out there through orthodoxy and what really is happening and what theology actually says and what scriptures actually say, not Schofield's footnotes in a poorly translated American Bible. That would be helpful. But there's a lot of misinformation out there. Of course, that's on purpose. And so, yeah, I tend to lean that we are not about to enter World War III. Again, maybe that's just my natural optimistic outlook. I understand what Netanyahu is doing. He's got a lot of personal problems, a lot of political problems. And every time that happens, people are like, well, we start a war, then people will like me. Clinton did the same thing. If you remember, when the Lewinsky stuff was going on, he's like, let me bomb a country. And he's like bombed an aspirin factory or something. And so that's sad. That's pride. That's itself is vainglory. Like you're willing to sacrifice lives so your personal or political situation can improve. How evil. And so, again, I'm optimistic. We'll see. By the time this comes out, we might not be here, but I don't know.
Oh, we'll be here. I mean, this the interesting thing, one of the terms I struggled with for a while was fear of God. And it was one of those I understood, I guess, theoretically, but I couldn't access it, because they're fearful about all these other things too. And I don't know. I just wasn't funny enough, like the Trinity, being non-ironic about the Trinity or non-ironic about energies and essences, for all that stuff, I was like, yep, good, okay, fine. Like no resistance. Fear of God was the hard one for me, and I felt it came down to acceptance, like a true acceptance of both my religious experience and being a Christian after 32 years of being an atheist. And I was, whittling that down and getting rid of those defenses and getting to that point. And then I can't remember the exact moment, but I do remember that there was a day when it just hit me where I was like, now I get it. And now I can have access to that, where all I fear is God and his judgment.
Mm-hmm.
And that's how I live my life. Everything else is just everything else. You
Yes.
try to properly address everything in your life or that comes to you. And sometimes you hit a home run, and other times you don't. Other times the ball hits you,
Mm-hmm.
and you struggle through and you stumble through and you do your best. But I'm no longer fearful of this world and of, let's say, bad consequences that might happen just because I'm trying to do the best thing.
Mm-hmm.
If the intentionality has to be there. So
Mm-hmm.
I'm working on the intention. If the intention is good and I can look back on it and go, I know exactly what I was thinking or feeling at that time, and I can tell you that my intentions were good, then that's all I care about.
Mm-hmm.
That's again giving it to God. Everything else, how it's received, what other people do with it or would not do with it, or etc. Again, these are all gifts from God. God will do this for you. You're just here trying to be the best vessel you can be, and work on that. I think why I don't think we're into a World War III scenario is that no one wants it.
Mm-hmm.
There's no great desire for it. one guy wants it, and
Mm-hmm.
maybe some other people who are attached to him or who are on his payroll want it,
Mm-hmm.
but no one else, Russia, China, I think even the smarter people within America,
Mm-hmm.
um,
I agree.
don't want it. So you have to have you have to create that desire first in order for it to materialize. The war in Ukraine with Russia and NATO's involvement and all that, I think there was a great desire from a
Yes.
great number of people within, let's say, the West who wanted that war, Britain
Yeah,
especially.
absolutely. For
Yeah,
a couple of decades, I'd say.
sure.
Uh, it's like the project for a new American century that was all the neocons, Paul Wolfowitz and these guys put out in the late 90s prior to 9/11, and it said they wanted to go to war with this country, this country, this country, but they knew there was not public support for it. But you need a new Pearl Harbor. Boom, we got one. So hopefully we don't get another new Pearl Harbor. If we do, hope it's just as magnificently horrible as J6. That's just like the Civil War or 9/11. Um, but everyone looks at that and it's like, that's stupid. No, it's not. Now, short of actually getting some sort of crazy attack, and there's not going to be a legitimate one. That's what's scary. If there is one, it's going to be, as we like to say, the false flag sort of thing, but that could still fool people. I don't know. I do think a lot more people are awake to stuff like that than were, let's say, in September 2001. But yeah, I agree. Not enough people want it. And I think not only do not enough people want it, a large majority, maybe not majority, but a large percentage of people are pretty dialed into why they don't want it, and any sort of false flag or something that looks shady. I'm not sure enough people are going to be behind it then.
Yeah. I There's only one, I'll say fear. It's not a fear, but the one thing I've been tracking and paying a very close attention to, I won't make this prediction because I don't know how things are going to shake out, especially you have an election. The world has an election in November.
Yes.
As I like to say, I am not an American, never have been. I am but a lowly Canadian living in Australia. I can't even vote in this country. So, elections to me is it's a reality TV show that has
Mhm.
dire consequences
Got a
to
reality
my
TV
life.
show star.
Right, exactly. It's perfect.
Yeah.
But uh so I'm just watching this, just trying to keep track of everything. The one thing that I guess is on my mind is that I do not think without possibility that they pull a cyber attack, quote air quotes,
Right.
and that the power grid in, let's say, the eastern or western seaboard goes down, and then that gets blamed on somebody,
Yes.
most likely Iran at this point.
Yes.
I was waffling, I'm like, Russia, Iran, Russia,
Right.
Iran, and I think it's going to be Iran.
It's like ping
There,
pong. Goes back
there's
and
lots
forth.
of yeah, there's lots of little stories now that are kind of popping up about electrical grids
Yes.
and transformers and outsourcing to China and they're and I'm looking for them. So it's always hard to know if it's my bias or what exactly is going on. So you kind of look for second and third effects. But I think that's coming. And what I would advise people to do is, I'm not saying go be a prepper and don't start freaking out, but maybe get a few extra rolls of toilet paper stuck
Mhm.
away somewhere. Because
Mhm.
I think, I think in all likelihood, whether it's a cyber attack or this longshoreman
Yeah.
situation that's going on, which I'm confident saying this because I don't think that's going to be resolved anytime soon. Yeah, look forward to having a harder time getting certain things. I'll put it
Mhm.
that way.
Mhm.
I think that's going to be pretty accurate, and you know whether that how that gets blamed on people or what that materializes in the future. Well, we shall see. We'll be here for it.
Uh, I will say I see a lot of good things that make me feel positive, as Matt would say, no effing black pilling, because I brought this up with him during the Ron Paul years when there was true grassroots support. The Ron Paul people own the comment section. During the Trump first run, Trump's people own the comment section. And now they're trying to tell us, like, oh, Kamala's popular. People love Tim Walz. He's like the dad. that Fox News took away from you, and which tells you that crowd anyway. But go under anything that those people post, Tim Walz, Kamala, it's 99% against them. I just went on I think it was my own governor. It was here in Texas, Greg Abbott. We stand with Israel. Go look under that, even in Texas, and 90% of the comments are negative. And so I think there's a lot of people waking up to the BS of, well, we got to support this thing or this person or this. We're telling you, damn it, the emperor has clothes. Look, like them. They're popular. Israel's important. You got to support them. Ukraine. I don't think that sentiment's out there. They're trying like these last gasps of like, please believe us. And it's just the toothpaste is out of the tube and it's you just can't get it back in. I think that's great. That's a white pill.
Oh,
not even
absolutely.
a bitter one, Jason. Just
no, it's sweet. It's candy sweet. It's like what would you say? Like a Werther's Original. I'm showing my age. I don't really do sweets.
Here, son, take this candy. Yeah,
it's like
I bet you
caramel.
Tim Walz carries some of those around to give out.
Yeah, don't do that to Werther's Originals.
That's true.
I like now I can't anymore. Damn it!
And in his pocket, all hot. Yeah,
just buttery. Yeah, like it's just warm. He's with his grubby little fingers. Did you see the? We'll end on this. Did you see the debate with JD and Mr. Walz?
I watched the whole thing. JD Vance
crushed
those of us.
My boy JD.
Yes, that's who I wanted. I wanted Tucker first and foremost, and if it wasn't going to be Tucker, I wanted JD Vance. And I think those of us who wanted him are vindicated because that was masterful. And speaking of last gasps, that was Tim Walz and Kamala Harris are a very good representation of a dying regime. They finally found like the worst, least intelligent people they could. It's like, well, we're about done. You know, it's like the fifth stringers on a football team when all the starters are injured. It's like, you go out there now. Well, we're going to lose anyway. And that's what it feels like.
Yeah, get the drunk wine ant and the touchy-feely guy who just looks like a moist towelette. Like, yes. Put them up there. Let them deliver the message. That's wonderful. Your confidence in government couldn't be higher, I believe.
Right.
From that performance. And yeah, I mean, JD
masterful.
Crushed. It was beautiful. It was
just the body language alone. It's like Nixon.
The fourth wall break. I was on the Old Glory Club stream participating on their panel, and someone mentioned in that, it was like, that's like The Office. Like, and I never watched The Office, so I haven't either. But this, like, he does it. He was always doing this, like, kind of look to the camera, like, right?
Yep.
And then I saw the memes, and it's the guy from The Office, and apparently that's like winning over millennial women, like just underwear dropping everywhere for dreamy eye JD. So
yes, it was. It was something special. It was sort of if we all been talking about this circulation of the elites and the counter elites, and that should be a white pill too. Like, this is what's happening. This is who's coming up. Do we agree on every single policy? I don't know. Maybe not. I'm not looking at him as like my idol or something like these people look at Kamala and Biden. But my goodness, what a vast difference in just everything. Kennedy won. Well, outside of other things that happened, he beat Nixon because they had this debate on black and white TV, and Nixon just looked sweaty and old, and Kennedy, of course, looked nice and young. It reminded me of that. This nervous, scared old guy, kind of crazy looking, with this polished young man who knew eye contact, facial expressions. He owned everything. It was masterful. Trump's got his own shtick, but this guy, I mean, I think he could beat Trump in a debate.
Oh yeah, hands down. But
just different styles, of course.
Completely different style. I don't think JD could win the personality contest. With Trump. But give him 4 years. Let's see what he gets after 4 years. Yep. The interesting things, and sorry, I'll beg to keep you for a little bit longer than I gotta go get the kid ready. But there's all those. Again, not to get into our vain glory, but it's more like,
I know. Yeah.
Right? One of those moments over the last few months. The the interesting thing about this too, of course, is now we can start seeing this pathway forward, and this goes into my neo-trads predictions as well. It's I'm starting to see it in real life, because just over the last few months, there's been a lot of men. You go to a party, a kids party. I don't leave the house hardly at all, but whenever I do, and you get these conversations with these guys, and all of them are kind of like, yeah, Trump is gonna, like, and this thing's happening, and it's kind of like this little bit of a you down, and maybe some of them know a little bit about my peculiarities, let's say, and so they're eager to talk, right? And it's like there's this like edging now. Is it safe?
Yeah.
Is it good? Is all right?
Right.
There's a sense of opportunity here.
Good use of the term edging.
Yeah, exactly. Well, the only use that is appropriate in any terms. But one of the things I say I've said about civilizational capital in the '90s is that you had this mood in the '90s. I know everyone likes to go back and retroactively crap on the '90s, but there was a period there where there was a great feeling of optimism that we were at this end point of history. We had beat the Cold War was done. This great big pressure, this threat from above was gone, and what's going to be the future going to be like? Who knows? We can start doing stuff, and we didn't build anything. We built strip malls, and didn't do anything grandiose and wonderful from that moment. And I feel like we're now entering that moment again. We're starting to, and again, I'm biased and all the rest of it, but I'm starting to see this in pockets of people who 2016 this wouldn't have happened.
Correct.
2020 this wouldn't have happened.
Nope.
Maybe a bit more. But now in 24, it's happening. And there's a sense, especially within men, of like, this is a rise to something moment. There's something being activated in the soul of Western men. And that can go a lot of ways. Vengeful Sun is coming. Yeah. But there's always hope and opportunities for everyone in this moment. And I think that's really what I'm trying to get through to people, is that we can seize some of this and do it in the right way.
Right. I was just speaking with a lady that's I mentioned that she's in charge of what's called the Christian Orthodox Coalition. It's sort of a caucus, political what do they call PACs, whatever. No, it's not that, but it's something like that, to get the Orthodox a spot at the table within the political discussions. And she straight up said, I asked her, like, if Kamala were to win, I obviously don't think she has any chance, but let's say she did, would you have an ear, if you will, in that organization? She's like, no. But we do in Trump's. I know that for a fact. I worked for his campaign. So do we have to love every single thing that they do? No, but we have an ear in the Trump organization. And JD Vance has straight up said, I don't want the true Orthodox Church being shut down in Ukraine. I'm against that. So I would take these wins where we can get them.
Exactly. Let's end on there. Buck, like I said before, man, I always love talking to you, brother.
Me too.
It's a little personal story. When I came back on X for the old show and I created an account, you followed me out of nowhere. And I don't know if it was because I was following James Gentleman or something like that, but I don't expect you to know, and it doesn't really matter. But I remember you following me out of nowhere, and I didn't even know, who is this Buck Johnson person with Counterflow? Like, what is this, right? Who is this follow? And yeah, ever since then, man, I love your content.
Same. I probably thought you were a
cute human being. Probably. Well,
yeah,
I was cuter back then. I don't
know. You're aging like a fine wine.
left out on the table with a cork off, probably.
Right? Yeah, it's old Jewish wine, but still. No, I'm joking.
Yes. Don't mind the bitterness. The bitterness, it makes it good. It makes it good. It's like it's like a little bit of balsamic every time you take a sip.
Yes.
Buck, let the people know. Let the people know. Where they can find your content.
Go to the YouTube page, Counterflow Podcast. Subscribe if you will. Let's see, counterflowpodcast.com. It's on all the podcatchers. Follow me on Twitter at Buck Rebel, BuckRebel. And that's all I got. I love Jason's content, so keep supporting this fella right here.
Thank you very much, sir. And thank you very much for everyone who's been listening, supporting, liking, and sharing, and doing all the bells and whistles and the things that you do, and leaving the comments and giving the 5 stars and sending me money and going to foxandsons.com and buying coffee with 2-bit in the coupon code. And all the other things we do and all the other people we support and try to signal boost and bring your attention to. This is our moment, my friends. We are the narrative now. It is our narrative, and we are taking it. And I would like you to be along with the ride so you can be part of the new narrative too. And again, always appreciate you. Thank you very much, Buck.
You got it.
Talk to you all again very, very soon.